When people learn Chassidus, the real wish and end in learning Chassidus is to have madar her. That means to say that the ideas that we learn, that are of course all ruchnius, metaphysical, non-physical, and Chassidus tries to bring these ideas, these concepts, like the idea of Ein Sof, for example, close enough to our minds that we should have a sense of it. And you learn Chassidus, and you learn Chassidus, and you learn Chassidus, that there should be a bit of an upleg, there should be a bit of a sense of the spiritual realities about which Chassidus speaks. And people spend much time, years and years of their lives, learning and thinking and rethinking and relearning as the chapleg, and that they should have a certain sense of dvarim ruchniim. And that's really the point and the purpose of learning Chassidus. On the other hand, because Chassidus is so abstract and so esoteric, it's very, very helpful to put things in very simple, concrete words. When you put the ideas of Chassidus in simple, concrete words, you don't understand. There's no hasaga, there's certainly no hasaga samahus, but putting them in concrete words puts everything into a context. And by putting things into context, you create a framework within which the effort at having a ruchnius dikederher, a spiritual sense of the material that you're learning, becomes possible. To say it in other words, all of Chassidus is called Yedias HaMetzias. You never really understand the ideas you're learning about in Chassidus, because to understand something directly, personally, you have to be able to relate to it. And we can only relate to physical things. We can only relate to things that are separated by time and space and body. And therefore, when relating to spiritual things, metaphysical things, we don't have a real similarity in our world to the ideas that we're learning. So we're really learning that they are rather than what they are. And as a result of this, so much of the limud is yedias hashlila. You're never really understanding a concept directly. You're understanding a concept indirectly. In other words, you want to understand, for example, what a neshama is, which is part of the discussion we're going to be learning about tonight. Or what a malach is. You're never explaining what they are, you're explaining what they aren't. And in the famous words of the Rambam, Kol sheyarbe b'shliles yiskara v'lachiyuv, the more aspects you can apply to understanding something that are indirect. A malach is not this, and a malach is not this, and a malach is not this. The more things you apply to understanding something in the indirect way, the closer you come to understanding it directly. But of course, kol sheyarbe b'shliles yiskara v'lachiyuv, the more things you negate from something, the closer you come to understanding it directly, but you never reach it. You never go from shlila to chiyuv. You never understand it directly. You become closer and closer to understanding it. Which is why when you learn Chassidus, what you always want to do is put parameters on everything. You want to put mishbitzos. You want to put ktsavis. You want to put a framework on the subject that you're learning that gives you a narrower intellectual space within to work, so that you come closer to understanding the ideas. And therefore, having form, having words and context, even though that's not at all understanding, and it's certainly not at all having a dead head, having a sense of the spiritual material and the subject matter that you're engaged in, but it makes it much easier to be honest and objective and true in understanding the idea that one is wishing to understand. So I'm going to start tonight's class with a statement. I have made this statement many times over the years. I did not invent this. The statement I'm going to make is based on Chassidus that I've been learning for many, many years. But as you get older, I don't know if it's a matter of becoming wiser and humbler, and therefore you become less sure of yourself, or it's a matter of becoming insecure. But I think what I'm about to tell you is true. I'm not saying this unequivocally, but my understanding of the material is, as I'm about to say it, based on the learning that I've done, not today or yesterday, but years ago. So I'm going to make a very simple statement, which is going to set up our class. That Chassidus discusses Kalim. And of course, in Kalim you have Oyer. So this is very dynamic, very involved. In general, there's two levels, Pnimiyas HaKelim and Chitzonius HaKelim, the inner half of the vessel and the outer half of the vessel. And specifically, you have actually four levels. You have what's called Pnimiyas de Pnimiyas HaKeli, you have Chitzonius de Pnimiyas HaKeli, and then you have Pnimiyas of Chitzonius HaKeli and Chitzonius of Chitzonius HaKeli. In other words, there's an inner and an outer aspect to a vessel, just like a pot has an inside and an outside. But in the inner half of the vessel, there are two aspects, the inner of the inner and the outer of the inner. And then the outer aspect of the vessel also has two aspects, an inner and an outer. And the way I understand it is that Pnimiyas of Pnimiyas HaKelim is the Mokar of Torah. And Chitzonius of Pnimiyas HaKelim is the Mokar of Mitzvahs. And the Pnimiyas of Chitzonius HaKelim is the Mokar of Neshamas Yisrael. And the Chitzonius of Chitzonius HaKelim is the Mokar of Bria, including Malach. I'm going to repeat this one more time. And again, I'm not explaining this, I'm simply stating facts that as indirect as they are, create a framework in which learning can take place. Pnimiyas of Pnimiyas HaKelim is the Mokar HaTorah. Chitzonius of Pnimiyas HaKelim is the Mokar of Mitzvahs. Pnimiyas of Chitzonius HaKelim is the Mokar of Neshamas Yisrael. And Chitzonius of Chitzonius HaKelim is the Mokar of creation, including the Malach. Now, to explain this, only our subject, our Maamar, this is the second class of the Maamar, Shabsoisai Tismoiru, and we're holding line 32, is only going to be discussing Neshamas Yisrael and Malachim. We're going to be discussing the differences between Jewish souls, Neshamas Yisrael, and Malachim and angels. There's no mention of Torah, there's no mention of mitzvahs. I'm simply giving you this picture so that you'll have a healthy picture, a complete picture. In general, when you talk about the difference between Pnimiyas HaKelim and Chitzonius HaKelim, Pnimiyas HaKelim is Elokus, and Chitzonius HaKelim is outside of Elokus. In other words, Pnimiyas HaKelim is one with Oyer, and Chitzonius HaKelim is removed from Oyer. But when you say that Pnimiyas HaKelim is Elokus and Chitzonius HaKelim is separate from Elokus, Pnimiyas HaKelim is one with Oyer, and Chitzonius HaKelim is removed from Oyer, there's another side to the coin. And the other side to the coin, of course, is that if something is one with Elokus, it doesn't have a Metzias B'fnei Atzmi, it does not have a self-identity. And one of the basic needs of a creation in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a separateness from Him. In other words, Oyer, Torah, which is one with Hashem, is totally bottled, and all of those is revealed the Eibishter. But Torah does not have an I. There's no identity to Torah other than that it reveals Hashem. And therefore, Torah is not a servant of Hashem, it's an expression of Hashem. And the same is true of mitzvahs. So although being Elokus, being one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, being Davik in Elokus is advantageous, being separate from Elokus has its milas as well. As we always discuss it, Neshamas Yisrael are like Hashem's children. What do we know about the relationship between parents and children? Various things, but one of the basic ideas which is discussed so much in Chassidus about the relationship between parents and children is that every parent gives his or her child their very essence. Parents give their children their very essence. But what is the essence of the parents that the parents give their children? And the answer is the same essence that their parents gave them. And so it goes back to Adam and Chava. And what is the essence that parents give children, that these children will then grow up and get married and become parents themselves and transmit to their children? And the answer is, what is this essence? Their independence. An adult human being is not a radiation of his father or his mother. He's an entity unto himself with his own free will and with his own understanding and his own feelings and his own senses and his own free will, his own identity. So the deepest thing parents give us is that we should be separate from them. and God forbid children grow from parents and they don't become separated from their parents, that's a kaleke, that's a cripple, that's a disease, that's terrible. It's very, very not what a human being is. It's most unhealthy. You're supposed to be a metzias b'fnei atzmai. And in order for this to be true, you have to have what's called the Chassidus etzem. The essence which is transmitted from parents to children makes the children independent. But that the etzem has to become an adova nivdal. The essence of the parent is transmitted to the child in a way that it's now child and not parent. In other words, when a parent gives out his essence, it's him. How does the parent give out his essence, and then when it manifests in a child, it's a totally separate materials? So of course, when it comes to Hilada, Chassidus talks about Tipa Gashmias. The parents have to give their essence through a physical seed, a physical point, which is separate from them, which can then be the basis for the creation of the new Metzias. In other words, for one essence to create another essence, where that second essence it has within itself the essence of the first essence, which is that just like the first essence is separate from its source, the second essence is separated from the first source. In order for this to be true, they have to be separated. And therefore, there is an advantage of chitzonius hakelim over pnimius hakelim. Pnimius hakelim is one with oir, which is wonderful, but there's no aspect or element of separateness. Chitzonius hakelim, which is separate from oir, allows for the idea of being an inyan b'fnei atzmai. And that's why neshamas Yisrael, souls, Jewish souls, as well as creation, come from chitzonius hakelim and not from pnimius hakelim, because pnimius hakelim are one with oir, and because pnimius hakelim are one with oir, they don't identify with themselves, they identify with oir. Chitzonius hakelim, because they're separate from oir, identify with themselves, and that's the basis of the independence of a yid and his free will, and it becomes the shutaf la'kadosh baruch hu b'maaseh bereishis, and so on and so forth. But specifically, there's two aspects, right? There's the pnimius of chitzonius hakelim, there's the inner aspect of the outer part of the vessel, and there is chitzonius of chitzonius hakelim, the outer aspect of the outer part of the vessel. What's the difference between pnimius of chitzonius hakelim, the inner aspect of the outer half of the vessel, and the outer aspect of the outer half of the vessel? The answer is the inner aspect of the outer half of the vessel is taka separate from the Eibishter, and at the same time it's connected to what is inner. In other words, an neshama is separate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, therefore it has free will and so forth and so on, but it's a lakus. Chitzonius of chitzonius hakelim means it's separate from the Eibishter, but it's separate from the Eibishter in such a way that it's klipa, that it's cut off. So when Chassidus talks about neshamis versus malachim, Jewish souls versus angels, and malachim go in the same package, they go in the same unity with creation at large. Malachim, which come from pnimius of chitzonius hakelim, are the way a lakus becomes an entity unto itself, which we've talked about many times over the years that we've been learning these Maimorim. It's a quote which is found all over Chassidus, but the Rebbe, our Rebbe, repeats it very many times. Often, a lakus shenasa nivra, a neshama is how godliness becomes a creation. And the meaning of this phrase, Elikus Shanasa Nivra, in short, is that when you meet a malach, he looks the same, when you meet a neshama, it looks the same as a malach. A malach is a nivra, a malach is a creation. A nivdal, a spiritual creation as opposed to a physical creation, but a creation nevertheless. But a malach is a creation that's not a lakus. A malach is a creation that's a metzias b'fnei atzmai. Angels are entities unto themselves. They may serve Hashem, but they're a metzias b'fnei atzmai, a separate entity which is in the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're not one with the Yebishter. A neshama is a lakus, is godliness which is made into a metzias b'fnei atzmai. So when you look at a malach and you look at a neshama on the outside, you will see no difference. Why? This is a creation. That means this is limited and this is bound by a teva, which basically is another word for klipa. This is a creation, and this is also limited by a teva, which basically means klipa. But the difference is, a neshama can break its teva. A neshama can go past its nivra status. And that's the meaning of a lakus shenasa nivra. On the one hand, a neshama is created to be an entity unto itself, which is limited, it has a certain personality and a certain nature, which makes it look like a nivra, like a limited creation, which is klipa. But underneath it, there is a lakus, there is godliness, and the neshama is able to access the lakus inside of itself to free itself from one limitation to go to a higher madrega and have a different limitation, which you can then free itself from again and again and again, ad ein sof, ad infinitum. But a malach has a certain tava, has a certain limitation, in as much as it's a creation, and it can never exceed it, it can never go past it, it can never transcend it. So therefore, if you would meet a malach and a neshama in Gan Eden, they would seem quite similar. Both of them are limited, both of them are creations. But in reality, they only look the same. The neshama, which is limited, is a lakus. It can break out of its limitations, and it can reach the madrega of Ein Seif. But it's a lakus shenasa nivra. The godliness is also limited in the form of a creation. In other words, in the form of something which is separate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that separateness from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not only a negative, that it's klipa and it's ma'alamu mastir and it makes all kinds of troubles, but it's also the basis for free will, for bechira chofshes, for being a partner to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As opposed to a malach, which is separate from the Eibishter, but it's a nivra, it's completely limited. So we're going to have a class which is, for the most part, going to be discussing the difference between neshamas and malach, angels and souls. And just to tell a shtickle sipur, it's always it's always good to tell stories because everybody remembers the stories. So there's a story, a geschmacke mais, it's a simple story. I think the story is found from the Rabbi, that the Rebbe Rashab, the Friedrich Rebbe's father, used to travel a lot for all kinds of reasons. For health reasons, for other reasons, for askonos reasons, for gaining golus reasons. So he was in Germany, in Würzburg perhaps. And he met the Rabbonim there. Some of the Rabbonim were big Talmidei Chachamim, Groise Go'inim, in Germany at that time. And one of the Rabbonim that he met saw the Rebbe Rashab writing. It must have been the year Samach Vov. So he said to the Rebbe Rashab, "Can I look at what you're writing?" And the Rebbe Rashab said, "Yeah." The Rebbe Rashab was in the midst of writing a tshuva in Nigle, a scholarly work on Likutei Torah, and this Rav was a Gaon. So they talked about it. The following year, the Rebbe Rashab was again in Würzburg. And again, this Rav came into him, but this time he didn't ask. He simply walked over to the Ksav and he started to read what the Rebbe Rashab was writing. And the Rebbe Rashab was writing Maamar of Shua Samach Zayin, which is about Malachim and Neshamas. So he goes over to the page and the Rebbe is writing and he's looking over his shoulder and he sees the whole dissertation about Malachim and Neshamas, angels, souls, similarities, differences. So he jumps back and he says in German, "Ha ha! Mit Malachim and Neshamas atir zutan," meaning to say he had no connection to Pnimiyas HaTorah, had no connection to Seidus HaTorah. He was a Lamdan. And he said, "I didn't know that you're busy with souls and angels." He was very frightened off by the fact that the Rebbe Rashab was busy with Malachim and Neshamas Yisrael. So this class is going to be about Malachim and Neshamas. And I've created a bit of a framework, right? I've given you a little bit of a context. The framework is, obviously, neither a malach nor a neshama are physical. They don't have a guf gashmi. They only have a guf ruchni, perhaps, as you'll see inside. Also, neither a malach nor a neshama reveals Hashem directly. They don't simply express HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you talk about oyer of Elokus, which in the Nimshal is Torah mitzvahs, we use the word dveikus. Dveikus doesn't mean attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Dveikus means representing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Torah and mitzvahs is not a thing which speaks on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Torah and mitzvahs instead are an expression of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. In other words, they have no self-identity, they have no mitzias, they have no yeshus, other than to reveal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Neshamis and malachim both have a self-identity. But in the case of the malach, it's a klipa. It can't change it, it can't break it, it can't exceed it, it can't go past it. So it doesn't really have free will. In the case of the neshama, it only appears that it has those limitations. But because the neshama is free by itself, chovush mater es atzmei mebeis ha'asurim, so it's not really, the teva and the gavul and the guf is not really limited. So we put, so to speak, a top and a bottom, a ceiling and a floor on the conversation. Neither a malach nor a neshama davar gashmi. And neither a malach nor a neshama is revealing the Eibishter in a way that has no self-identity. Both of them are nivroim. And within that framework, there's huge differences. That a neshama is not really limited in spite of the limitation that it seems to have, and a malach is. So let's begin to read inside line 32. In order to explain the questions that we had last week about Shabbos And notice that I forgot to mention Shabbos until now, and I hope to continue with that way in order to explain the difference between Shabbos and the weekday and the two levels of Shabbos, etc., etc. We have to begin discussing the descent of the neshama into a body and into this world, which is going to be discussed over the next several classes. The descent of a neshama into this world is a terrible decline. The neshama in Gan Eden is in a very good place, and the neshama in Gan Eden is in a very safe place, and the neshama in Gan Eden is busy with very lofty things. And it leaves this good and safe and lofty place to come into this world that kol hadrachim b'cheska sakona. The neshama's leaving Gan Eden, coming down into this world, puts the neshama at risk. First of all, the journey is dangerous. In other words, to get into the guf has a lot of sakona. And second of all, once it successfully arrives in the guf, which is going to hold it and through which it's going to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's additional risk of failing on the mission, etc. So why would the Eibishter put the neshama through this? And of course the answer is, it's worthwhile. The neshama descends into this guf and takes the risks of this journey for the benefit of an ascent, of a subsequent aliyah. Now just to mention avot, which is really worthwhile, and this you have of course very deeply in Tanya, that is a Kabbalistic phrase, it's from the Arizal, that has one prefix and two suffixes. It starts the same way, but it ends two different ways. The beginning of the phrase is Haneshama atzma eina tzricha tikun ella, which means in English, the neshama itself needs no correction. The neshama is perfect. Ella. So if the neshama is perfect, what is the neshama doing? So there's two ends to that phrase. One end to that phrase is the one you have here. Haneshama atzma eina tzricha tikun ella aliyah. The neshama may be perfect, but by the neshama descending into this world, it has an aliyah. And the Lashon HaKabbalah, before it comes into this world, it's the madrega of kelim garmaihi, and after the neshama is eila lamayla, so it goes up to the madrega of chayayi, the madrega of eir lishtaba b'gufa the malka. You need to say it. So why would the Eibishter put a neshama into this world that's in such a good place before it arrives here? You need to say it. And the second suffix is neshama atzma tzricha tikun ella. Why did the neshama come into this world? To raise up the world. Here, the Alter Rebbe mentions the first. Haneshama atzma ina tzricha tikun ela aliyah. That the neshama comes into this world for the purposes of yiridat seirech aliyah. So we want to discuss the idea of the neshama coming into this world and what benefit the neshama is going to have by taking this journey because of the principle of yiridat seirech aliyah. But in order to explain this, the Rebbe goes into a long introduction. Line 33, V'hine yadu, everybody knows. The Gamkei, there's Yiridasan and a Neshama before it descends into this world. Hayu Gavei Me'ed B'madregim. The Neshama is Yisrael, Jewish souls, godly souls. Before they ever took the journey to come into this world, they were in a very lofty place, in a very high perch to start with. What is the level for which a Neshama comes? Kimayim, but like it says in Chazal, Yisrael, all over Machshava, that the Jewish people come from the Eibishter's thought. Creation happens from speech, right? The Eibishter created the world with speech, as they state in Chumash. And Malachim are included in that speech. Malachim are amongst Asar Mamaris, like Ve'ef, and so on. Mashenkin, the Shamas Yisrael, all of Machshav, they come from the Eibishter's thought. And Amar Chassidus, they bring that when it says the Lashon all of Machshava, Bebechinas El Yeinish Have Machshava. There's lengthy discussions. There's a Maamar in Tafresh and Zayin. It's a Maamar about Yeshua. And the Rebbe said this Maamar once. Maybe in Tafshin Yudzayin or something like that, the same Maamar, which has many levels in the Manian of Yisrael Olav Machshava, and you have it in Samachvav Bariches. Yisrael Olav Machshava means Mebchinas Al Yeinish Machshava. Yidna are in the Eibishter's thought, but in the very highest level of the Eibishter's thought, there's a lot of levels of thought. Atzilus Lagabi Malchus is Machshava, Kes Lagabi Atzilus Machshava, till the highest Madregas of Lifnei and Tzimtzum, and Yisrael Olav Machshava means the highest Madrega of the Eibishter's thought. So before the neshama comes into this world, it's incredibly one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it comes from Hashem's machshava as opposed to the Eibishter's dibur. But you have in Maamar Chassidus where they point out that neshamas may be part of the Eibishter's machshava, but the mashal that's brought is like a adam achesha v'davar acher. It's one with Hashem's thought as Hashem thinks about something which is separate from Himself. And of course the nimshal is that neshamas are designed to be separate. Says the Rebbe Mashen, Kenafil b'malachim, as opposed to all of creation, besides for the Neshamas Yisrael, including even angels, that they're created not from thought, but they're created from speech. The Ksiv, as the Pasuk says, of Ruach, pivot the air of Hashem's mouth, called Tzavam, He creates all of the hosts of His creation, including angels. Now, what do we know about malachim? We know about malachim that they're not physical; they're only metaphysical, spiritual. We also know about malachim that they're not the lakus; they're nivra, which is why they're called in the Rishonim nivdalim. Nivdalim means you moved from Gashmias, but Nivdalim also means you moved from Malakus. And even Malachim are created from Hashem's speech. Only the Shabbos Yisrael are created from Hashem's thought. So the Rebbe says, just like when you speak about a person and his power of speech, you understand the insignificance of the individual word. When a person speaks and he radiates words and ideas. The amount of words that a person speaks are insignificant compared to the amount of words that a person could theoretically speak. Because it says, HaNefesh Meleya Asias, the Neshama can speak infinitely. So no matter how many words a human being has spoken, compared to the possibility of speech, it's insignificant. Moreover, when a neshama speaks and radiates words from inside itself to outside of itself, it doesn't change the neshama whatsoever. Because of these words, since a person can speak infinite words, whatever number of words radiate from inside the neshama to outside the neshama makes no difference. The same is true when we talk about creation. All the worlds. The malachim and the malachim. Not only the physical worlds and the spiritual malachim, but the neshama, the nefesh, which is inside these two, is only a trace, and totally insignificant. Etzle is barach in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, has no reckoning, has no value whatsoever in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because they're like words. And we understand that individual words, even many, many individual words, are insignificant and nothing compared to the possibility. So all of creation, including malachim and B'deibish, is dibur. And of course, dibur means several things. The first significance of dibur is that the words are separate from the one who's doing the speaking, and they're also limited with a limited amount of air, which of course in the nimshal means a limited amount of chayis, etc., etc., etc. And the words of speech with which the Eibishter makes whatever he makes using the Eisias HaDibur are nothing compared to Elokus. And therefore, malachim, as great as malachim are in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're like nothing. But Jewish souls are different. Why? Because all ubamachshav, they come from the Eibishter's thought, and in thought itself, they come from the highest madregas of Hashem's thought. And since malachim come from speech, and they're separate from the Eibishter, and the Neshamas Yisrael come from thought, which remains one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, K'vayachol, so therefore the malach is limited, the angel is confined and limited, and the neshama is infinite. V'yafal gav, says the Alter Rebbe, a question. The gam ha-machshava, Hashem's thought, like human thought, is klach hashiv etzli yizbarach. It's insignificant compared to him. In other words, when he spoke about creation, he tried to underscore the insignificance of all matter that's created, including angels, by saying that they come from words. And since he can speak an infinite number of words, the number of words associated with creation is insignificant, as opposed to neshamas that come from thought. Says the Rebbe, thought's the same story. Thought is also insignificant. Just like a human being's thoughts, that that they radiate, they're drawn out of his soul and his spirit. That they're insignificant, inconsequential, in terms of how much they carry of what the person is. And therefore, the more a person thinks, the person doesn't become less by thinking. Your thoughts radiate from you like your words radiate from you, and it makes no difference to you whether you think and speak or you don't think and speak, because the words don't change anything. Machmas ha-machshav is because of these thoughts, and again the reason is because you could think theoretically an infinite number of thoughts. So the question becomes, on line 46, when you talk about Hashem's thoughts, so to speak, and you claim that Jewish souls are special because they're created from thought, while angels and everything else are created from speech, or in the language of my introduction, that angels and everything else comes from chitenius of chitenius hakelim, and the shamas comes from chitenius, pnimius of chitenius hakelim. The question is, hiklach shiv, this thought of the Eibush is also inconsequential, or kamesha kosev, as the pasuk says, aniyah deshem leisha nisi, that when the Eibush creates, it makes no change in him. We talk about the relationship in Hashem and creation, and we talk about achtos and ein eid milvade, that the world changes nothing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. when Hashem creates it. So there's of course many aspects to this Ein Od Milvadi. There's many aspects to this Ani Havaya Lo Shanisi, and one of them is that the investment of the Eibishter is a ha'ara. What he invests in creation is outside of him, so to speak, in the kind of way that it doesn't diminish him whatsoever. So the Alter Rebbe's question is, just like we all understand that all of creation, including angels, that are created from Hashem's words, Hashem's speech, because they're a ha'ara and they're chutz la'etzem, make no change in him. So the Alter Rebbe says, but neshamis, Jewish souls, which are created from Hashem's thought, also are only thoughts, and they make no change in him when Kvayachal the Ibishta thinks and creates neshamis Yisrael. So the Alter Rebbe answers the question on line 47. It's true that when a person, and Kvayachal Lamayla Lahavdal, thinks an individual thought or even many thoughts, it's outside of the nefesh. It makes no difference to the nefesh itself because you can think infinitely. There is still a difference between thought from speech. Sha'adibur nikra levush hachitzein. Speech is an outer garment, a secondary garment. And I'm going to read and translate and explain afterwards. Just like physically. Levush, clothing that a person wears are by definition she'enei leiv sheitamid. You don't wear them all the time. Now, of course, when you say that a person doesn't wear clothing all the time, there's two connotations. The first connotation is I can wear this shirt, I can wear a different one. And the second connotation is I can go without a jacket. So speech is a garment, as it says in the Keheles, Eis ledaber ve'eis lachshes. There are times that everyone speaks and it doesn't speak. That rak lepa'amim, only on occasion. The hainu k'shaheilech l'chutz, when you go out of your home, you put on clothing. And inside your home, you don't have to have clothing. Kach hu hadibur, the same is true physically, speech. Sharei le'tamadu medaber, a person doesn't speak the whole time. Ela k'shetzarech lagalas zilasi, only when there is somebody else, and you need to speak to that somebody else, do you use words. V'yesh matzeh leruche shalei ledaber, a human being has the possibility to control his spirit and not speak. So speech is a garment that is separate from you, not only because kalavush tachlifim v'yachleifu, because you could take off one garment and put on another garment, but you go without it altogether. As opposed to thought, which is an inner garment, which is shalev sheitamid. You wear it all the time, even though thought is a garment, and therefore you can think one thought, and you can think a different thought. So you can replace the lavush, but you can't avoid the lavush. Gam kishahu b'fnei atzmei, even though thought is separate from the nefesh. V'haraya, you can change from one thought to another thought, but you can't be altogether without a thought. You have to think something. Thought never rests. And again, the Maamar, which is always brought in conjunction with this, is machshava mishutat tamid. Thought is always functioning. A person has to always think. And therefore, even though thought, like speech, is outside the nefesh, and the nim shalabaylach v'yachala, thought, like speech, is outside of Elikus, which is why it makes no change in him when he creates the world through speech and through thought. Nevertheless, there's a difference. That thought is the levush ha-meyuchad in my nefesh, and dibur is the levush ha-nifrad. Speech is separate from the nefesh, because it's possible that you should speak and possible that you shouldn't speak. And thought is one with the nefesh, because a person must always think, even though they could think different thoughts. And therefore, when you say about Hashem Kvayach, that he creates worlds and angels with speech, and he creates Jewish souls with thoughts, there's a very big difference between the two. That Yiddish and Neshames are higher than Malachim, because they come from the Eibishter's thought, and the thought is higher than the Eibishter's speech. So let me give you a thought about the difference between thought and speech. And of course, these are classic ideas in Chassidus, and they're ideas which, in our learning over the handful of years, or the many years, that we've had this chus to learn these shiurim in Likutei Torah and Torah, we've just come across this on a number of different occasions. The biggest difference between thought and speech is that speech has to be to somebody else. And thought is a person communicating with himself. Dibur is chutz lenefesh. Speaking is going from inside the person to outside the person. And machshava is teicha nefesh. Machshava, a person thinks for himself. Now, what is the difference between speeches which is for somebody else and thought which is for yourself? And of course, the obvious difference is when you're speaking to somebody else, the idea of speech is in relationship with something outside of you. As opposed to when one thinks, they're thinking only in relationship with himself, so the thought is for you. And therefore, neshames, which come from the Eibishter's thought, are one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and malachim and elames, which are the Eibishter's speech, are koyachal separate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it's more involved than that. It isn't only that speech is for somebody else and thought is for yourself. The biggest, or one of the big differences between speech and thoughts is as follows. When you have to say something to someone else, you have an idea, a feeling, an experience, and you want to share it. So if you want to share it with somebody else, you obviously have to use words. If you don't use words, you don't use communication, that person doesn't get it. The words that you speak in order to communicate it to that other, to that fellow, carry what's going on inside of you. But there's two very serious aspects of tzimtzum in this. When one speaks, there's two aspects of tzimtzum. The first is, I'm radiating it from inside me to out of me. I'm telling it to somebody else. And because there's somebody else, I have somebody else to tell it to. But there's another aspect. And what is that? When you speak to another person, you can't simply think about what you want to say. You have to think also about how you want to say it. In other words, a great speaker, or even an ordinary speaker, everybody who's involved in communication knows that communication is not only about deciding what to say. Communication is very, very much about how you're going to say it. And how you're going to say it is not about the integrity of what you're going to say, but it's about the listener's capacity to hear. When you speak to somebody else, I'm talking to you. Right? What is my goal? That you should understand what I'm saying. If my goal as I talk to you is that you should understand what I'm saying, I can't concern myself only with the ideas that I wish to share. I have to very much concern myself with your capacity to hear me, to listen to me. And therefore, when one speaks, they're focusing on the words. They're focusing on not what they're saying, but how they're saying it. I'm not only concerned with sharing with you the philosophical or mystical ideas that we're discussing. I'm very concerned with the words, the language, the form that carries those ideas. You should be able to understand me. So when your person speaks, they're focusing on the words. The words are carrying ideas, but they can't only afford to pay attention to the ideas, they must pay attention to the words that carry those ideas. As opposed to somebody who thinks. When one is thinking, they're thinking inside their own mind. They're thinking inside their own head. They're thinking inside their own brain. When a person thinks, so obviously they're thinking for themselves and not for somebody else. That's the biggest difference between thought and speech. But when you think, you don't have to pay attention to how you sound. You can afford to focus only on what you're thinking about and not how you think it, because as long as you understand yourself, it's fine. In other words, in speech, you put form before substance. In thought, all there is substance. The speech, the form is totally immaterial, because in communication with self, form is a non-issue. And that's really how Chassidus underscores the big difference between one who speaks and one who thinks. The basic difference between speech and thought is, in speech, words are going from inside of you to outside of you. And in thought, it remains one with you. The second difference is that when you speak, you can't just concern yourself with what you're going to say. You have to concern yourself with how it's going to sound, which is chitzonius. And when you're thinking, you only have to concern yourself with what you're thinking. You don't have to concern yourself with how it's going to be thought, as long as you understand yourself. In other words, dibur focuses on the guf, and machshava focuses on the neshama. Any person who shares an idea has a guf and a neshama. The neshama is the idea, the guf are the words that carry it. In dibur, you have to concern yourself with the guf that's carrying that neshama. In machshava, you don't. And therefore, the Rebbe says like this: it's true that machshava is a ha'ara of the nefesh, it's chutz nefesh, just like dibur is a ha'ara nefesh, chutz nefesh. This is klach shiv l'gabei atzmos, this is klach shiv l'gabei atzmos, this is only leishan nisi because it's chutz liyatzim, and this is leishan nisi because it's chutz liyatzim. It's true. But still, there's a huge difference between speech and thought. And that is the spoken word that radiates outside of the person. Number one, it's separate from the person. Number two, it's not constant. Sometimes you speak, sometimes you don't speak. And number three, when one speaks, they're concerned with how they say something, not only what they're saying. And in thought, number one, it's one with you. Number two, you think it all the time. And number three, you concern yourself only with what you're thinking and not how you're thinking it. And therefore, the shamas that come from achshava, l'mayla in the nimshal, and malachim which come from dibur are very, very disparate. They're very, very different. Because Vayachal, when the Eibishter thinks neshamas into existence, he doesn't have to concern himself with the form of the neshama. He has to concern himself only with the substance of the neshama, as opposed to in speech. But then the Rebbe goes on. I'm holding now line 53, and the Rebbe is going to add an additional idea, right? Before we keep reading, what do we have on the table? We have on the table a discussion about how neshamas are better than malachim. Why are we discussing that neshamas are better than malachim, higher than malachim? Because we want to argue against Yeridat Tzedek Aliyah. We want to claim that why should a neshama come into this lowest world and do what it needs to do and struggle with what it needs to struggle? It was so well off, so to speak, before it ever left Lamaila, the heavens. And in arguing that the neshama was in a wonderful place before it left the heavens to come to this earth, so why would it descend into this world? The Rebbe is arguing the superiority, the supremacy over a neshama over a malach. And the argument is neshamas come from dibur, machshava, and malachim come from dibur. So he argues the difference between dibur and machshava is that dibur is intermittent and machshava is constant. And again, the point that I added from other Maamarim, of course, that dibur, you're focusing on the mitzias and not only on the mahus, and machshava focusing only on the mahus. And now the Rebbe says something else. And I'm going to be very honest. I don't fully understand what we're about to read, but I'm going to read it. This is another difference between machshava and dibur, and another difference between neshamas and malach. Thought is forever, just like the soul itself is forever. When a person speaks words, since a person doesn't speak all the time, so the words exist so long as the person speaks them. And when a person doesn't speak them, they stop being. But since a person must think all the time, so their thoughts are eternal. And of course, the difficulty here is thoughts aren't eternal. We think eternally, but we think different thoughts. The Rebbe argues that since a person must think all the time, there is something eternal about all of the thoughts that he radiates from his nefesh, even though he thinks them one after the other. And then in the Tzemach Tzedek, he brings Makedes. I tried to look up these Makedes. I couldn't understand why. But the Rebbe is making a very, very serious distinction between speech and thought, which is, in addition to the points we made before, there's another idea that when a person speaks words, they're for the moment. And when a person thinks thoughts, they're forever. And therefore, the worlds and creations that were created from speech, they have two criteria. Number one, they have a beginning. They started, and they came into being and were created in the 6 days of creation. Not before. They didn't exist earlier. It was a moment of speech, which of course words from Keheles, so they came into being. And number two, at the end of time, they're going to become nothing again. That after the time that the Eibishter fixed for the worlds and the creations to be, of Meshach Amidas Elam, for the time that the Eibishter gave the world its existence, which is Shita V'Shnim Da'ava Al Macholo. The world is for 6,000 years. They're going to return into nothingness. Why is it that the worlds have a beginning and an end? The creation comes from speech. And we know about speech, there's time to speak and a time to be silent. So the beginning of creation is eis ledaber, then the creation is eis lachshes. So the Eibishter makes a world through speech, so number one, the world has a beginning, and number two, the world has an end. In other words, it's finite. Mashen can an neshamas as opposed to Jewish souls. They come from the Eibishter's thought. They don't have those limitations. On the one hand, number one, before the Eibishter created the world, the neshamas already existed. It says in the Medrash, that Vayachal the Eibishter consulted with Neshamas Yisrael about creation. Melech Malchei Amlocham HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says the Medrash, along with the Eibishter, Yoshvu Nefoshet Shal Tzadikim, the souls of the righteous sat, Shebaham Nimlach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with whom the Eibishter consulted whether or not he should create his world, Ubaras Ha'elam, and created his world. Or as the classic expression which is found in Chassidis, is b'mi nimlach b'nishmeseim shal tzadikim. When the Eibishter created the world, he consulted Neshamas Yisrael. So therefore, the Jewish soul always exists. Since they're part of Hashem's thought, it always exists. And by the same token, v'gam lochein, and for the same reason, they're going to exist forever. They're not going to disappear. Malachim have a beginning and have an end. When the Eibishter spoke, Eis L'daber, they come into being. And when the Eibishter stops speaking, Eich Lachshas Modaber, they disappear. Neshames come from the Eibishter's thought, so they were before creation, and they're going to be forever. V'gam lochein him nitchem, they're eternal, they're going to last forever. Ki ha'machshav v'gam ken tmidas, because thought is eternal. And then he qualifies it by saying, V'aseichel v'machshav im treined lames parshin, ideas and thoughts are inseparable, and since ideas are eternal, ideas are forever, so is the thought that carries those ideas. Then come to the levushim minei ubei. Let me pause. The Rebbe wants to tell us the difference between a neshama and a malach. And his malachim come from speech. Neshamas come from thought. And there are a number of different distinctions that the Maamar brings and that we discussed that separate speech from thought. First of all, speech is outside, thought is inside. Second of all, speech is for a moment, thought is forever. Third of all, in speech, you concern yourself with the form, and in thought, you concern yourself only with the substance. And now we have, in effect, another point that speech is temporary, it has a beginning and has an end, and thought is forever, it doesn't have a beginning, and therefore it doesn't have an end. So what does this mean, that neshamas always existed because they come from thought? So of course the answer to that question basically is I don't know. I really don't know. The Rasag, Reb Sadia Gaon, in his Sefer Emunas V'Deis, has a very, very involved discussion about the idea that a neshama is forever, a soul is forever. That even though the world is temporary, the world has a beginning and the world has an end, the soul is forever. The Rambam discusses souls very little. He spends much, much more time discussing angels, malachim, than he spends discussing neshamas. But the Rambam also has a little bit on this idea that souls are forever. Souls are forever means they were before creation, and souls are forever means they exist after the creation. Why? Why? So I'm going to give you a very simple example. Forgive me for being a little bit sarcastic, but it'll save time, so I'll afford it. There's a great question. People have pets. People have pets, animal pets. Non-kosher animal pets, kosher animal pets. They become very attached to these pets. And of course, these pets die. And what happens? Is there an animal heaven? When an animal dies, what happens to its neshama? Does it go to heaven? It's a simple question. And there's also a simple answer. The answer is there's no such thing as an animal heaven. When an animal dies, his soul dies with the body. Why? Because an animal is a physical creature. And the only reason there is life is because there is that physical creature. In other words, in an animal, the soul serves the body. Because we need to have a physical goat, let's say. And a goat can't exist without chayis, without a nefesh. So if there's going to be a goat, there's going to be life. But just like the body dies, the soul dies, because the purpose of that soul is to serve the body. A human being also has such a nefesh. A human being has a level of a neshama, which is like lahavdil, the soul of an animal, that it serves the purposes of the body. And when the body is no longer, the soul is no more. This is how it's explained in Rambam. But there's another soul, a human soul. And the second soul that a human being has is called nivdal. Has nothing to do with the body. It existed before the body came into existence. And therefore it will exist after the body ceases to exist. So there's an eternity to a neshama. The problem is, in these Rishonim, Reb Sadia Gaon and the Rambam, when they talk about a neshama being forever, it's the same as a malach. In fact, they compare neshamas to malach. Just like malachim are sichliim nevdolim, they're abstract intellectuals, which are not connected to the physical world, and therefore they're, as long as ideas exist, angels exist, and this is forever. And they compare neshamas to them and say neshamas are the same thing. Here in our Maamar, we want to separate souls from angels. In other words, in philosophy, maybe souls and angels are the same, but in Kabbalah and in Chassidus, souls and angels are very different. Angels begin when the Eibishter created the world, and angels cease to be when the world ceases to exist. Neshamas Yisrael existed before, and Neshamas Yisrael exist after. So what is this? What does this mean? That because Jewish souls come from the Eibishter's thought, they're eternal, they're forever. They existed before the Eibishter created them, and they're going to exist after they're supposedly no longer going to exist. And I don't know how to explain Pshat in this Maamar. I certainly don't know how to explain Pshat in this Maamar based on the form and the language of the Alter Rebbe. But I'll share an idea with you that our Rebbe talks about, the Rebbe, unser Rebbe. And the Rebbe is so infatuated with this particular Torah. The Rebbe repeats it so many times. And that is as follows. There's a Torah from the Mezritcher Maggid, a very famous Torah from the Mezritcher Maggid, which is very frequently cited in the Maimorim of Reish Hashanah, where the Mezritcher Maggid brings the Medesh, Yisrael Olu B'machshava, that Yidden go into the Eibishter's thought, and he gives a very simple example. A person has children. A father has children. A mother has children. A human being has children. So naturally, when the children are very little, they live in your home and you look after them and you take care of them. But eventually they move away. So the reality is that somebody who has a child, so tsuras pneim is nechkak. Their countenance, the way they look, is carved into the imagination, into the memory of the parent, and it never goes away. When a parent has a child, that parent relates to the child almost as if it relates to itself. The parent sees the image of his child. Even if the child has gone away, or God forbid, if a parent has lost a child, you never forget. The imprint that a child makes on his parent is such that it's in the parent's imagination forever. That's the Taich Yisrael Olu B'machshava, we're Hashem's children. And like any parent, a Yid is imprinted kvayochel on the imagination or the thought of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in such a way that it never passes. But then the Mezritcher Maggid says something else. And there's this something else, which I believe is, which the Rebbe always wants to underscore, and perhaps it's the Pshat here in the Maamar. The Mezritcher Maggid continues, he says, listen, we're comparing a Jew to a child, and the Eibishter Kvayochel to a parent. That just like a child is imprinted, is carved into the memory, into the imagination of his parent, and he never forgets. A Yid Kvayochel is carved and imprinted on the memory, on the thought Kvayochel of the Eibishter forever, he never forgets. But there's also a difference. What is the difference? The difference is a parent cannot visualize his child until the child actually exists. A child that's born in Tafshin Ayin Zayin, the mother and the father could not have a chakika of the tzura, of the cluster ponim of that child in Tafshin Ayin Vav. Because you can only visualize and retain or maintain or remember the countenance of your child once you know how that child looks. Before the child is born, you have no concept of what the child is going to be or that child is going to be. And therefore you can't visualize him prior to his coming into being. But the Eibishter is l'mayla min hazman. Hashem doesn't have limitations of time. So before the Eibishter created the Jewish people, they were already imprinted in his machshava. Yisrael Olu B'machshava means that since tomorrow the Eibishter is going to create a Yid, and the Yid to the Eibishter is going to be like a child, so before that child was created, the Eibishter already imagines him. Or to say it in other words, a Yid's place in relationship with the Eibishter is real. A Yid is not serving a purpose for the Eibishter. A Yid is the purpose for the Eibishter. And because a Yid is the purpose of the Eibishter, he's part of the Eibishter's thought. So even though Hashem only creates Neshamas Yisrael when he creates the world, but because the purpose of the world is Neshamas Yisrael, Yisrael Olu B'machshava, B'minim lach b'nishmeseim shel tzadikim, everything that the Eibishter makes is based on the fact that there's going to be a Yid, and the Yid Kvayachal is the point of it all, and therefore is nechkak in the imagination of the Eibishter once he creates him. But since the Eibishter is l'mayla min hazman, a Yid is nechkak Kvayachal by the Eibishter always. And perhaps this is the pshat and what the Alter Rebbe says here from line 53 until line 65. That since Yid come from the Eibishter's thought, and in this case we don't stamaz I mean machshava, we mean al yenesh hava machshava, the thought of the Eibishter, which is the real purpose for which the Eibishter made everything. So a Yid is in the Eibishter's thought before the Eibishter thought him. Before the Yid is actually created in Atzmos and Hus of the Eibishter, the Yid already exists. And even after the Yid is no longer going to be, since the Yid is the purpose, he's going to be forever. Somehow this is connected to the different character of Machshava and Dibur, and I'm not certain how. But this is the bottom line. So to summarize, what we have so far is The Alter Rebbe wants to argue the supremacy, the superiority of a neshama over a malach. So he says malachim come from speech, neshama Yisrael come from thought. And even though both of them are chutz liyetzem, machshav is one with the yetzem, and the dibur chutz is not one with the yetzem. And then he adds, dibur has a limit. There's a beginning and there's an end. Eis ledaber, which is when the Eibishter made the world. And Eis lachshes medaber, when the Eibishter stops speaking at the end of the 6,000 years and everything stops existing. Yisrael, all of machshava means that the Eibishter always thought them and will never stop thinking them. In other words, not that he's going to think about them always, but that even before he thought about them, they're already chakukim in his machshava, because they're the matara and the kavana. And after Kvayachal, the Eibishter stops thinking about it, they continue to be one with him. So therefore, even though dibur is chutz la'etzem and machshava is chutz la'etzem, both speech and thought are outside of Elokus, so to speak, which is why we say Ani Havaya Leishanisi, there's a huge difference between the creation of a malach and the creation of a neshama, because the neshama is created from Hashem's thought, from the highest madregas of Hashem's thought, and they're mamish one with him. And the Rebbe continues, I'm on line 66, to be sure there's different levels of neshamas. Zemizeh one from the next. There's 600 shamach ribui. Neshamas sharashim, there's 600,000 parent neshamas. Keneged samach ribi, ACS hatera. Shebetera, they correspond to the 600,000 letters in the Torah. Now line 68, which is really parenthetical. Af shebetera, einim te samach ribi ACS. If you count up the letters of the Torah, you don't have 600,000, you have half of that. Nevertheless, we say, it says in Megala Mukas, yes, she should be Eis Atera. Why? The reason is because Eis is Hemshech. Shem Eis is Ahavi. There are many letters that are unwritten. Shebechlal HaNekudis. The vowels create letters that are not written. For example, if you have the word Baruch, yeah? Baruch has a kametz. Kametz beis ba. But if you think about it, the kametz beis ba has an aleph after it, because when you pronounce the ba, the pronunciation includes, if you will, a silent aleph. Or to say, give a different example. If you say hiluch, hiluch is spelled hey lamed vav chaf, but the he automatically includes a yud. So I don't know the diktuk, I don't understand it. If you count the unwritten letters that come into existence by the virtue of pronouncing the words, you go from 305,000 letters to 600,000 letters. These sounds are not part of the written letters, they're part of the pronounced letters, which is the vowels. In thought they exist. Hu aleph. Every time you have a kometz, you have to add an aleph. V'achiriku yud. Every time you have a chirik, you have to add a yud v'chulu. As a result, you have 600,000. Now, we don't know all the details, but fine. Bottom line is, it says in Megala Amukis that the word Yisrael is a Rosh Tevis. Yesh shishim ribi ACS la Torah. There's 600,000 letters in the Torah, and they correspond to 600,000 Jews. But those 600,000 Jews, number one, they're sharashim, they're root neshamas, their parent neshamas, because from each one of the 600,000 parents, you have 600,000 sparks. And number two, they're not equal. Some are the eyes of the collective Jew, some are the ears, some are the nose, some are the mouth, some are the tongue, some is the heart, some are the brain, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of diversity. But in spite of all the diversity, neshamas Yisrael b'chlal come from machshav. The bottom line is that neshamas Yisrael are superior to malachim. Because since souls come from the Eibishter's thought, they're timeless. They're part of the truth of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kvayachal, like children are in relationship with parents. And malachim are limited. Malachim are nivroyim and nivdalim. And even angels are on a very high level, and souls are a much higher level. The Imkain, line 72. So now the Rebbe says, Yipoli, having just established the superiority, the supremacy of Neshamas Yisrael over Malachim and over Nivroim, because this comes from Dibur and this comes from Machshava. The question is, why would the Eibishter bring the soul down so low, considering the fact that the soul was in such a lofty place before the Eibishter created him? The Rebbe gives a very gishmak pshetel. We say in the first Berach al Krishma, and then later on we say that the Eibishter is above all kinds of time, And we follow up by saying that the Eibush should have mercy on us. So the Alter Rebbe says, Sherachmonos gedei lehi al haneshamas. If you think about what a Jewish soul is, and where it comes from, it's a terrible rachmanos on the neshama. Why? Because the neshama is part of the Eibishter who's misnasei mimei seilom, and nevertheless they've come into a goof. That sheyordu meigra rama, they descend from such a lofty mountain behind a machshavta yisbarach. The Eibishter's thought, and what madregen the Eibishter's thought, hamesnasei mimei seilom, which is altogether higher than time and space, and nevertheless it descends lamata miyed, very much down into this world, but goof and nefesh habahamis, into a body and an animal soul. So the question becomes why? What justifies taking a neshama, which is part of the Eibishter's thought, and thought on a level where it existed, the Eibishter's connection to a neshama in thought is so deep that the Yiddish neshama existed before the Eibishter actually thought it. And the Yiddish neshama will continue to exist after the Eibishter stops thinking it. So if a neshama is such an unusually distinct creation, why would the Eibishter punish it, so to speak, and bring it into a goof, and to an elam, and to Allah is vestadim rab? And of course the answer is, I'm on line 76, that the teretz is, it's for the sake of an aliyah. And again, as I told you earlier, there are other explanations for Yiddish and Neshama Lamata, such as making a dira b'tachtoinim. But in this Maamar, the Neshama comes down from its lofty place of Machshava into this world to have an aliyah. Kitzer. Inyan el Molish Shamisoshtei Shabbos. The idea of Yidden keeping two Shabbos, or the two Shabbos and one Shabbos. Inyan Elas Tomad and Elas Shabbos, which was last week's Shir. Mao Pirish Aliyah. And then tonight's Shir was V'yuvan Behegdim. The explanation can be understood by prefacing Inyan Yiddish and Neshama al Guf Shidam Kitzerech Aliyah. What is the Yerida Tzerech Aliyah of a Neshama? But the Rebbe doesn't, in the Kitzer at all, bring those details about Machshava and Dibur. So let's continue to read. Line 80. We explained the source of Machshavas, Malachim, and Neshamas. We explained the so-called supremacy or superiority of a Neshama over a Malach. And we nevertheless justified why the Eibishter puts Neshamas into a goof, because the purposes of Yerida Tzerech Aliyah. So what needs to be explained now is, what is the nature of this Aliyah? What is the limitation of a Neshama before it comes into this world? And what new level of ascent, what new level of Aliyah does a Neshama gain by coming down into this world? So the Rebbe answers V'inyan Aliyah in order to explain the gain that the Neshama has, in spite of how great it was prior to coming into this world. What it will benefit by going down and going back, but up, Yuvan Alpi Maim, it requires us to preface first another few words from the first Berach of Birchas Krishma, where it says, Beidei Kedeishim, the Eibishter creates holy ones, that Yishtabach Shem Chala'ad, that praise the Eibishter's name forever. Now what goes afterwards? Right, this is Baruch Al-Netzach, Sereinu Malkeinu V'Galenu, Beidei Kedeishim, Yishtabach Shem Chala'ad Malkeinu, then it says, Yetzim Misharsam Vashem Misharsam. So Yetzim Misharsim, Vasher Misharsam goes on Malachim. And there's two types of Malachim. Yetzim Misharsim means Malachim that are created over the course of history. And Vasher Misharsam means the Malachim that were created in the first 6 days of creation. Or that sometimes explained, Asher Misharsam means the Malachim that are created on Monday, which are forever. And Yetzim Misharsam, which are Malachim, which are created on Thursday, which come into existence and disappear from existence, and so on. But the word Misharsim goes on Malachim. Kedoshim goes on Neshamas. So in the first Berach of Kriyashma, we talk about the Eibishter created Neshamas, Beidei Kedoshim, and he created Malachim, Yetzim Mishasim, Vashem Mishasim. But when it says Beidei Kedoshim, that the Eibishter creates Neshamas Yisrael, before it says Yetzim Mishasim, Vashem Mishasim, that the Eibishter creates Malachim, he adds a few more words, 4 words. Yishtabach Shim Chaload Malkeinu. So the Rebbe is going to analyze the idea that Beidei Kedoshim, Hashem creates Neshamas. Yetzim Mishas Vasher Mishas, Eibishter creates Malachim. But nevertheless, there's a benefit in creating the Neshama because of Yerida Tzerech Aliyah, as underscored in these few intermittent words, that between Beidei Kedoshim and Yetzim Misharsav, Yav Yishabach Shem Chala'ad Malkeinu, we want to understand the connection between Neshama, who's called Kadesh, and Yishabach Shem Chala'ad. Line 81. Ki ha-Neshamas Nekraim Gedeshim. Neshamas are called holy. As we say in the davening, Ukadeshim, they are holy. B'chol yom, every day. Yalu chasel, those who praise you forever. The koyal and the shamas goes on Jewish shows. We have three things: Ata Kadosh, you are holy. Shimcha Kadosh, your name is holy, which goes on Ein Save. And then Ukadeshim b'chol yom yalu chasel, which goes on the shamas Yisrael. So three things are holy. Koyachal Eibush is holy. His light is holy, and the neshama is holy. Now, when they say Ata Kadosh, after you say Kedusha, which describes the Malachim's Kedusha. So the Rebbe says in line 83, in other words, the third Bracha of Shemini Esrei, we say Kedusha. I don't have time to elaborate on this, but this is the Metzias. Malachim say Kedusha every day. And the Shammos Yisrael also say Kedusha every day. And part of what we do is we actually say the Kedusha that the Malachim say. But then after we say the Kedusha that the Malachim say, Nagdishach Naritzach, K'neam Siach say, Tzarfei Kedesh, Tzarfei Kedesh is Malachim, right? Kesa Yitnu L'cha, Malachim Ameinei Ma'ila, Malach. After we speak about the Kedusha of Malachim, we say the Kedusha of Neshamas Yisrael, or Kedusha B'chayim Alu Chasel. Shabbatchil, Aimim say the Kedusha of Malachim. You begin by saying the Kedusha as Malachim say them. Ech Shem Kadosh Baruch V'Yimlech, Malachim say Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Baruch V'Deshamim Keim and Yimlech. Achakach Aimrim Eid, and then you say, O Kedusha B'chayim Ala Neshamas. First you say the Kedusha of Malachim, and then you say the Kedusha of Neshamas Yisrael. Why do you first say the Kedusha of Malachim? And only after the Kedusha of Neshamas Yisrael, because you go from lower to higher. Tchila, Kedusha of Malachim, the lower level is the Kedusha as recited by the Malachim, because they're in a lower level. And then the Neshamas, who are on a higher level, follow. Shamalachim, what's the reason the Malachim are lower? Because Malachim yesh lehem guf, Malachim have a body. Which calls it the Nil. Simin Yud, Ugvi Yossi Tarshish, that they have a body which is like the image of Tarshish. Uksiv, it has another pasuk, Eisa Malach of Ruch is the image that creates Malachim with spirit. Misharsev Eish Leed, those who serve him with fire, with wind. And it says in Chassidus, from Sifrei Rishonim, from the Ramban, I believe that Malachim are created from a combination of Eish and Ruach. The two finer of the four Yesodis, Eish and Ruach, are the source of Malachim, which is what it says, Malach of Ruch is the Misharsev Eish. And the Shem Yisrael don't have gufas. And if you've ever learned Chassidus about this, you know that it always brings, there's a machlekes Rambam and Ramban. The Ramban says Malachim have a guf. The Rambam says Malachim don't have a guf. But here he's going, in this Eifid, Malachim have a guf. Because Malachim have a guf, Malachim teif semokim. Malachim exist in space. Sheyesh Malach Godel, there's a Malach whose greatness is, there's Mahalach Takshana, that is the distance of walking 500 years. V'yesh Malach Moshesh Elim, there's a Malach who's the size of a third of the world, or 3 times the size of the world. So V'hainu HaGuf Shalahem Godel, which means the Malachim are very big bodies, Kol Kach, Shubachinas Mokim, that exist in space. But even though Malachim are very big bodies that exist in space, the fact of the matter is they have a guf, they have Mokim. Or Machash Bechinas Mokim, in the minute they have space, Him Gampam Bechinas Man, they also have time, because Mokim as Man Shneim Him Bechinas Echa, time and space are interdependent, so Malachim are limited to a body, to time and to space. An angel is spatial. An angel is chronological in its order, in its design. Of course, it's very spiritual. And to understand what it means an angel exists in Mokum and Zman is a very complicated matter. But this is the bottom line. They're limited. They have a goof, and they have Zman, and they have Mokum. It says that Malachim cannot sing HaKadosh Baruch Hu whenever they want. They can only sing at particular times based on the teva of the goof which the Eibishter gave them. So Malachim are lower than the Neshamas. And when you say Malachim are lower than the Neshamas, you mean Malachim L'mayla lower than Neshamas L'mayla. Mashenkin and Neshamas, as opposed to souls, they don't have a body. And Ein L'bechinas Man and Mokum, they therefore don't have time and space. L'fish Hein Bebechinas Kadeshim, they're holy and removed. Because Kedesh Hainu, what is the meaning of the word holy, removed or removed? Chanashama K'meishi L'mayla, the soul is on high, is moved all, Bechinas Guf L'gamri, has no body whatsoever, not even like the body of a Malach. Vede Bechinas Mokum, therefore they have no space. V'lacheinim Gampim Bechinas Man, they're limited in time. V'al Kain says the Rebbe on line 95, Shira Shalhemu B'chol Yom Tavet. A Yid can daven anytime he wants. Even though there's a Zman Tefillah, the time for davening, and Vani Tefillah Silecha Deshem Eis Ratzon. The Zmanei Tefillah are Eis Ratzon, special, auspicious, appropriate. But a Yid is not limited to Zmanei Tefillah, he can daven whenever he wants. Fan Asipur, with the Baditche V'Rav and the Alter Rebbe. And I forgot the Prate Asipur. But the Nekudas Asipur was the Alter Rebbe and the Baditche V'Rav Mechutanim. They had grandchildren married to one another, and they were very close. It was a very great mutual respect and a pasha ahava and an ahada between the Alter Rebbe and the Baditche V'Rav and the Baditche V'Rav and the Alter Rebbe. So when they made this wedding in Shlobin, the Alter Rebbe davened very long, and the Baditchev davened very quickly, on time. So they asked each one why there was this difference of Seder. The Baditchev davened on time, and the Alter Rebbe davened longer and later. So when they asked the Baditchev said, what do you mean? I have to daven in this month, feel in time of davening. Because if I come late, the gates of heaven are going to be closed. My mechutin, whenever he wants, he can enter. Then they came to the Alter Rebbe, and they said to the Alter Rebbe, how come the mechutin davened on time and you davened late? So the Alter Rebbe says, because my mechutin is always ready to daven, I need to have achonah. Each one saw the mile in the other. And one of the aspects of the story was the idea of davening in the right time. But even though there's a right time to daven, a neshama doesn't have a limitation. He can daven whenever he wants. A malach who misses his time to say Shira cannot say Shira later. Like you have a story in Rashi with the malach of Asa that wanted to leave from Yankov Avinu. And Grad, I saw a word which I'm going to share just because I saw it. I think I mentioned it in an earlier class. The Merogachev Gon was careful to daven very early in the morning. So people asked him, why does he daven so early? So he answered, because it says in Chazal, on the Pasuk, Baron, Yachad, Keich Ve'Beker, that Malachim and Allah say Shira until Neshamas Yisrael say Shira. A Malach cannot sing until a Yid sing. He says, I don't want to hold up the Malachim from saying Shira. The Rogachev says, I don't want to hold up the Malachim from saying Shira, so I daven very early. The point is, Malachim have a time. They are creations of time, and they have a time when they can connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A Yid doesn't have a time. He's not connected to time, and any time is the correct time. They tell Tamaisa. Everybody likes stories, yeah? There was a Yid by the name of Rabbi Schneur. That was his name. He's buried behind the Rebbe, behind the oil, and you'll see that around his tzion there's actually a little fence. Because the Gehes Nagut a Rebbe met Alamed, the Rebbe once said. He was, I think, the fourth generation from the Mittel Rebbe. I mean, he lived a long time. I think he lived close to 100, or maybe over 100. He was the fourth generation from the Mittel Rebbe. Mittel Rebbe, son Reb Nachum, who in the Zivik Sheni married a granddaughter of Rabbi Chernobyl or something like that. So his Einiklach, they were Schneur sons. They're the Mittel Rebbe's kinder, but they went in the Derech HaChassidus of the Chernobyler. And this Reb Moshe Schneur Tversky was a descendant of the Mittel Rebbe from the Zivik Sheni Reb Nachum. I think he was mamish a fourth generation Mittel Rebbe, which is amazing. He had Gvaldik Arichas Yomim. He lived a very, very long time. And he was present when the Rebbe became Rebbe. He used to come to the Fabrengens, even as an elderly Yid, and he passed away in 1959 in Tafshin Yud Tes. He lived on Eastern Parkway between Kingston and Albany. I think he had his house, had a shtibel, a shul. He was a Goy Ben Arid, he was a Benon Shel Gedoshim, and the Rebbe was machabed him. I once met a grandson of his, and he told me two things about this Reb Moshe Schneur Tversky and the Rebbe. One, he actually showed me that the Rebbe wrote him a letter for Ksiva Chsima Teva. The Rebbe wrote him a letter for a new year. And of course, the Rebbe finished his letter, and Mevarche, he's blessing him with a Birchas Ksiva V'Chsima Teva. And in this letter, the Rebbe wrote, HaMevarech u'misbarech be'Birchas Ksiva V'Chsima Teva. I'm giving a bracha, and I'm taking from you a bracha for a Birchas Ksiva V'Chsima Teva. The Rebbe wrote letters to people for Ksiva V'Chsima Teva. He gave them a bracha, but he wasn't asking for a bracha back. I saw this with my own eyes. In the letter that he wrote to the Moshe Schneur Tversky, HaMevarech u'misbarech. I'm giving you a bracha, and I'm asking from you a bracha for a Birchas Ksiva V'Chsima Teva. This is what this Yid told me. But then he told me something else, which is really mind-blowing. I never heard this from anybody else. I'm going to share it. That the Frierdiker Rebbe sent the Rebbe to him in the Tzaddiks to ask him for a bracha for Zarachai V'Kayama. The Frierdiker Rebbe sent the Rebbe to him to ask him a bracha for Zarachai V'Kayama, which is very interesting. Anyway, this Reb Moshe Schneur Tversky used to come into 770 to daven. And he would often daven with the Rebbe's minyan. When the Rebbe became a Rebbe, he was very careful to daven mincha before the shkiyah, to daven on time. In fact, there's a story that he was coming back from the oil and was late. He stopped in the shop by Zaidi Schusterman to daven mincha, which is also a story. But it happened that the Rebbe came from the oil after the shkiyah. And this Reb Moshe Schneur Tversky, who was probably 30 years the Rebbe's senior or more, was davening with the Rebbe's minyan. And the Rebbe turned around to him sort of apologetically and said to him, Sishpet, it's late. The Rebbe felt bad that he was davening late and that he was davening late because of the Rebbe. So he very energetically responded. He said to the Rebbe, when the Rebbe davens is in tzat, whenever the Rebbe davens, now is the right time. By Neshamis, there is a Zman tefillah, there is an Eis Ratzon tefillah. At the same time, it's not a hard Zman, like by a Malach, that if bought over Zmane, but la Karbonei, a Yid can always be Mashlim is tefillah, can always daven. Why? Because Malachim are Neshamis are L'maylim in Azman. Val Kain, Shira Lehem, Hu B'chol Yem Tamid, Yid Neshamis, daven to the Eibishter all every day, all the time. V'zehu u'kedeshim b'chol yom halalucha. This type of neshamas are called kedeshim because they can praise and daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu anytime they want. V'gam sela b'li hefsek, it lasts forever. K'mayme, like it says in the pasuk, it's brought in the Gemara, yelchu mechayel el choyel, neshamas constantly grow, and their shirim also constantly grow. V'chol hichilach v'aliyah adei shir dafka. You have an aliyah through shir, the famous Torah from Malten Rebbe on the Mishnah Masechta Shabbos, kol baalei shir, nichnosa b'shir, v'yetzim b'shir, that you go, shir means a harness, that's the pshat in the Mishnah. And the Alter Rebbe Tamil Gezok Tatera, kol baalei shir, nichnosa b'shir, v'yetzim b'shir, that it doesn't mean a harness, it means negina, music. That the aliyah happens through shir. And since the neshamas have bli gvul aliyahs, they can always praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, we say, Beire Kadeshim and Yetzei Mishar. So Hashem creates neshamas, and Hashem creates malachim, and the neshamas were created to be Yishtabach Shimch. And what does that mean? Kadeshim b'chol yom. A Yid can say shir anytime he wishes. V'gam, another aspect of the limitlessness of the shira, of the praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu of a neshama is, it says Kadeshim Lashon Rabim, that the neshama is called Kadeshim in plural, two holinesses. Shesh Bechinos Kadeshim Rabim, Miyat Rabim Shnaim, there's two types of holiness, but it doesn't mean two, it means many. Gaveya Mal Gaveya Adroma miles higher and higher to no end, which is why you say Halucha Salah. A neshama is called Kedoshim. A neshama is Kaddish. Why say Kedoshim? Because he has no limit to how many levels of Kedusha he can ascend. Kihine, why are there so many levels of praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You praise what you understand. V'hatainuk, and what you enjoy. Belakusi Yisbarach, and godliness. And of course, there's no limit to understanding, and there's no limit to pleasure, and therefore there's no limit to praise. Which is Gan Eden, Chutaina Gan Neshamas, Basagosam. Gan Eden is the delight of the Neshamas, what they understand, Miziv, Ashchina, from the rays of the Shechina. Alder, Shamas Al, the Gemara says, Mutatul, Dain, the lace of the Alma, the Ossi, Shekdai, Kol Yisuri, Gainim, it's worthwhile to go through all the Gainim in order to get to Gan Eden. Af Gam, Bishvil, Gan Eden, Atachten, even if all the Neshama is going to experience the lower Gan Eden. Alachas Kama Vakama Gan Eden, Ha'elya. Says the Rebbe, how many levels of Gan Eden are there? The answer is, how many levels of understanding godliness are there? The answer is, it's infinite. Even though we speak only about two. Gan Eden, Gan Eden, Tachten, there's really infinite numbers of Gan Eden, but Shalein is Galo. And therefore, Vezel Yalucha Celebly Hefsek, a Malach, and the Neshama praises the Eibush that ad infinitum. So we did two things in today's class. Number one, we separated and we spoke about the superiority of neshames over malachim. And number two, we talked about the difference in how they praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That the praise of malachim is limited to time, and the praise of neshames has no limitations in time. And in Mitzvah Hashem, next week we'll continue. Liadi.